Hello and welcome back to the TomFM channel and a brand new experiment coming out to you. It's been an awful long time since we've last done an experiment, so I thought let's just get straight back into things and go back to the really old school days, the first experiments that I used to do on my channel that got the channel quite popular to start off with, and they were the billionaire experiments, and we haven't really done a billionaire experiment for quite some time, and I thought, well, let's just get back into it and do one. So as you've probably seen from the title and the thumbnail, the country in question we are going to be giving each team £1 billion in is Switzerland. Now the reason for this should be pretty obvious. I've been doing a save through the entirety of FM20 so far with Grasshoppers in Switzerland, so I thought it just makes sense to do Switzerland for the billionaire experiment. It should be quite interesting as well, because usually when we do this, we choose really low down ranking nations like, an Andorra or a Wales and things like that. This time we're starting with the Swiss Super League and the Swiss Challenge League, and they are 17th, well the Swiss Super League at least is 17th in European competition ranking, so it's pretty high up, and actually, given enough time, potentially the Swiss Super League could become the best league in the world. So if you've forgotten or you're new or you don't quite understand what's going on, essentially it's very simple, this experiment. Every single club, I've gone into the in-game editor, edit club details, go to finances, and every single club has been given a bank balance of £1 billion, a transfer budget of £1 billion, and a wage budget of 500 million, which is the maximum you can give a wage budget to. So that's what we've done for every single playable squad in Switzerland. It's only two leagues. We've got the Swiss Super League and we've got the Swiss Challenge League. So we'll keep an eye out on that. Now, the season starts in the 2019-2020 season, so for this episode, we're going to go 6 seasons in the future to take us through to the end of the 2024-25 season. To do that, of course, it's just pretty simple. We just go on holiday and just go a year in the future at a time, and I'll come back every single year and we'll have a look and see exactly what has happened within Swiss football. Before we jump forward though into the future, just want to ask you guys to drop a like on the video and subscribe if you're new around here. Dropping a like on the video is like the best thing you can do for it, so I would massively appreciate it if you could drop a like, and of course subscribe to the channel, because we want to really get the subscriber count going and moving again, which would be fantastic. Also, if you want to get access to all of the save files throughout this entire experiment and every single experiment, I'm changing things up a little bit on the Patreon. I am now making experiment save files and data files available at the very lowest tier on the Patreon, so it's not as expensive anymore to get all the save files if you want to. So head over to the Patreon, link down in the description if you want to try and get your hands on all the save files. And so we've jumped forward to the very end of this first season, and as you can see, Basel have managed to win the title ahead of Young Boys. Young Boys won it the past 2 seasons. Basel have come back and won it back from them. Sion in 3rd and St. Gallen in 4th is a pretty decent top 4 there. Season's not quite fully over yet. Zurich and Luzern are playing in the relegation playoffs. So if we go down into the Challenge League, hopefully we'll see Grasshoppers have got promoted. They did get promoted first time asking after being relegated the season before. Luzern in the promotion playoff there, so they're taking on Zurich there for promotion relegation. So we'll obviously see next season what happens with that one. But obviously what we are most interested in to start off in this very first season, I don't expect anything massive to happen in the first season, but we do want to see what kind of money is being paid by teams in this first season. £19 million was the biggest one. That's actually an inter-Swiss transfer. Noah Okafor from Basel to Young Boys for £19 million. He's a decent player, I've got to say, Noah Okafor. If we look at his attribute details, you can see that he's got a potential ability of 140, which is very good, to be fair, for a Swiss club to have a player of that ability. It's pretty decent. So Noah Okafor could be a fantastic signing for Young Boys. Sion, though, were the real big spenders, I've got to say. They spent £18 million, rising to £33 million for Angel Gomez from Manchester United. That seems like a really big transfer, that one. His potential ability is 147, so a little bit better than Noah Okafor, but again, he's a decent player. Also, a few more transfers over £10 million, so quite a lot of money being spent in this first in the Challenge League. Are they spending much money? Not massive amounts. I mean, a few £100,000 for some players, and one transfer over £1 million, but the Swiss Super League, that's where we're going to see most of these big money transfers. Just a quick check on Young Boys. How did they get on in the Champions League this past season? They got to the group stage of the Champions League in the first season, which we've got to say is pretty good going. Came 3rd in their group because they went through into the Europa League knockout stages, but lost to Roma there, as you can see. We'll also check Basel out as well, see how they got on in European football this past season. By looks of things, they got to the Europa League group stages, but by looks of things, got knocked out of that one because they weren't in any knockout stages, unfortunately. So they lost a few games there, but at least 2 teams making the group stages, which is pretty good going. So they're quite encouraging signs for this first season. I'll go and simulate another one and see what happens. So at the end of Season 2, Young Boys have reclaimed their title ahead of Basel, but Zurich and St. Gallen this time finishing off the top 4. Unfortunately, Grasshoppers have been relegated. Lugano looks like they won on penalties against Luzern in the relegation playoff, which means that Luzern must have lost the relegation playoff last season as well to Thun, who are still in the division. So Luzern have been very unlucky, I've got to say. Who went up from the second division in the end? It was Zamax, who obviously got relegated the season before that, so interesting stuff. Again, we will jump straight back into it and we'll have a look at the transfers off the bat. And Young Boys, no wonder they won the title. They have been spending a lot of money. How much money have they spent total? Let's have a look at all of these transfer history. They spent £120 million on players, and some decent players at that one as well, I've got to say, especially for a Swiss club. So they sold nearly £50 million worth of players as well. Sold a lot of players, but brought in a fair chunk of players, which is good stuff for Young Boys. No wonder they won the league title so convincingly. Basel spent money, but not quite as much money, I've got to say. Servette spent a bit of money too, but not really enough to keep up with the other boys. I mean, St. Gallen spent a big chunk of money on this particular player who looks relatively good. Let's get his actual positions up though. He's a central midfielder. There we go. Any good? Let's see. Potential ability of 147 is pretty decent, I've got to say. So maybe he can reach out at some point. But bringing in some big players, I've got to say, are Young Boys. This guy from AC Milan, he's got potential of 160, which is pretty high. So actually, he's probably classed as a wonder kid. He's 21 now, so must have been under 20 at some point at the start of the game, obviously, so would be classed as a wonder kid. Interestingly, the Swiss Super League seems to stay 17th in competition reputation, which seems a little strange to me. If we have a quick look at their coefficient instead, where is Switzerland? It's down in 19th. They've gone up to 29 points though, so they should leapfrog a fair few sides, so they'll get a few more European places going forward, which would be quite good, obviously. Did Young Boys do any good in the Champions League this season? No, actually they didn't, because they went into the Europa League group stages instead. I said they came second, not first, so they qualified for the Europa League instead. Did they get through their group? They did, and actually got through into the... didn't get through. Oh, they lost on away goals to Real San Sebastian, Real Sociedad there, so that's quite frustrating for them. Had a good go at it, but obviously lost on away goals by looks of things. It was Basel then that got into the Champions League, and they got to the group stages, but got knocked out in the group stages against Porto, Napoli and Barcelona. And then if we go back season 2, we can see which other teams qualified through. It was Sion and St. Gallen. So Sion, how do they get on? I imagine not. Oh, they actually got to the group stages. Didn't expect that to happen. They got to the group stages of the Europa League, but didn't seem to do anything good there, unfortunately. Whereas St. Gallen, if we click on them, they didn't get through to the group stages. They lost in the best placed knockout qualifying round. So another season out of the way. I'll jump forward once again and join back in season 3. Season 3, and once again, Young Boys have done it, having an almost invincible season, only losing one game all season. Basel once again coming second, qualifying for the Champions League alongside Young Boys, whereas St. Gallen and Servette qualify for the Europa Conference League, and then Thun must have won the cup till they qualified for the Europa League, so good stuff there. Again though, Young Boys seemingly running away with it, so hopefully they've made some more big transfers. This season though, looks like it's the turn of Basel to be spending some big money. Last season we saw Young Boys spend £120 million. This season being very tame, their biggest spend, £5 million, rising to £12 million and a £7.5 million as well. Basel have been splashing the cash this time around. How much have they spent this past season? Transfer history, they spent £151 million, surpassing that of what Young Boys spent, and they sold £57 million worth of player as well, so fair play to that. I guess though the quality of transfers Basel made haven't been quite as good, because as you can see they didn't win the league title. They came second to Young Boys once again. Ferran Torres was the marquee signing for Basel, coming in from Valencia for £27 million. He has a potential of 155, which is again pretty good going. Should be reaching that and is, pretty decent. In the Challenge League, Luzern are finally being promoted back to the Super League. Unfortunately, Grasshoppers couldn't bounce back once again. They finished third this time. Didn't even get to the promotion playoff. Will got to the promotion playoff, and they lost to Lugano. So another season in this division for Grasshoppers. But does also got Europa Conference League football, but that is because they are based in Liechtenstein, and they also play in the Liechtenstein Cup, and the winner of that gets a place in the Conference League. So that's why you'll see Vaduz every now and again then picking up Europa Conference League places. Young boys then, how did they get on in the Champions League? By looks of things, not very well because they lost to Dortmund, Shakhtar and PSG, so not getting through that or into the later stages of the Europa League, unfortunately. Basel, how did you guys get on in the... Were they also Champions League? No, they were Europa League, and they actually didn't get through into the group stages at all, which is quite a disappointing one for Basel. The Swiss Super League, by the way, jumping up to 13th in competition reputation. Zurich came third last season. They actually got relegated this season, but the season before that they came third, so we're back in European football, and they got into, again, the later stages of qualifying, but couldn't make it into the group stages, which is rather frustrating for Swiss football. And then St. Gallen, the other team that we were looking out for, their schedule, they got through into the Europa Conference League, into the group stage of the Europa Conference League, which is good. And looked like they had a bit of a good run, got to the knockout stages, but lost to Midtjylland in that first knockout round. So that's the best we've seen, I think, actually, from any side this season. St. Gallen, fair play, well done. So again, I'm going to go and zoom forward another season, season 4. Season 4 and Basel have taken the title off Young Boys. That £151 million they spent last season must have worked to some extent because they've done pretty well here. First of all then, let's check the transfers as the Swiss Super League moves up to 11th in competition reputation. If we look at just general transfers, again, the transfers seem to be, well, St. Gallen the biggest spenders this time, but the actual biggest transfers belong to Basel. But I think collectively St. Gallen are spending a little bit more money there. Young Boys, no, only one of these transfers down there for Young Boys, so obviously they spent their money and thought, that's it, we had our fill. Basel trying to improve a little bit more, but St. Gallen now starting to spend a bit more money on some players. How much did they spend this past season? £81 million. That is a nice chunk of money from them to be spending on players, with this particular guy being the best of the bunch, apparently, well, the most expensive, I should say, might not be the best of the bunch. 128 current ability, not really quite the player they should be looking to bring in if they want to progress, but still, it's more bodies, more experience. By contrast, the biggest transfer was a chap from RZ to Basel. I guess I'm not going to even try and pronounce that name because it's just too difficult for my English voice and tones and accent. It's too much for me. 130 current ability though, so again, maybe not the strongest player to bring in, but again, it's just more players, more bodies, and probably slightly better than what they already had. Got to say as well, actually, Toon popping up with a few decent transfers. How much have they spent this past summer? £37 million. That's a nice chunk of money as well. In the Challenge League, Grasshoppers finally going back up to the Swiss Super League. Hopefully we'll see them win a title or two by the end of this experiment somewhere. That would be quite good. Young Boys then, how did they get on in the Champions League this season? Straight into the group stages, and they got knocked out of the group stages, finishing bottom of their group because no more European football after that against Tottenham, Monaco. That's a tough group, Tottenham, Monaco, Barcelona. That's a very, very tough group. Basel then, how did these guys get on? They got through their Europa League group by looks of it. I say they won their first 3 and then lost 2, drew 1. Is that going to be enough? It was enough. They got through to the second knockout round where they played against Lech Poznan, which was a straight win, apparently. No 2 legs about it, just straight. And that's the Europa Conference League. Oh, so actually they came third in their group in the Europa League and dropped into the Conference League. That's what this Euro Cup 2 is. So they played Lech Poznan there, won that. Played Nice in the second round and won that. Lost the first leg of the quarterfinal 2-0, but then won the second leg of the quarterfinal 3-0 into the semi-finals where they drew away to Copenhagen 1-1, drew at home 0-0, so they go through on away goals. They're actually into the final of a European competition already, Basel. I'm going to scroll down. How did they get on in the final? Oh, they lost it. They lost it to Real San Sebastian in the final. You hate to see it. I've got to say, I was not expecting that so early on. I did not expect that to be happening, but I suppose the Conference League introducing itself was a great way for Swiss clubs to try and win something, and they came so close. A final already, that is pretty impressive. Basel, I salute you. St. Gallen then were in the Conference League to start off with. Looks like they got through their group, though, with some decent results. Straight into the second knockout round. They must have finished top of their group. They beat Ghent, and then ended up losing to Real San Sebastian in the quarterfinals, who obviously went on to win it later on down the line. That's good stuff for them. Servette were also in the Conference League, and by looks of things, they didn't actually get through the qualifying rounds, which is disappointing, whereas Toon were in the Europa League. They won the Cup, and in the Europa League, They lost in the qualifying rounds, got through to the group stages of the Conference League, though, through various different means. Their Conference League looks like they did pretty well there into that first knockout round, but lost to the first knockout round against RZ. So a very good performance, I've got to say, in Europe this season for our Swiss clubs. Now, though, we have to move on to Season 5, though, obviously. So let's get into it. And the battle for the top continues as Young Boys reclaim it from Basel, whereas Luzern, Grasshoppers and Thun round off the top 5 there, which is quite good. Grasshoppers in a great first season back in the Swiss Super League, which is good stuff to see. Again, we'll start off with transfers, and the biggest transfer this season, Thun, spending the big bucks, £31 million, rising to £51 million for a certain Xavi Simons, who is a bit of a wonder kid in real life. He could be a huge signing for Thun. That is a signing of it. That's a statement of intent. He's got a potential ability of 146. I think that needs to be changed. I think his potential ability is actually a lot higher than that. I think in the latest update of Football Manager, that does go up a fair bit, because Xavi Simons has got potential to be a very good player, according to a lot of people in the know, apparently. Basel, though, also spending a fair bit of money as well on a couple of players, Pepe and Diaz. Young Boys making a controversial signing. They signed Ferran Torres from Basel for nearly £20 million. That's a big signing there. But Thun also spending some more money on other players. How much money have they spent this past summer? Transfer history, £72 million. Thun are doing pretty decent stuff. So again, having a quick look through some of these sides, and so again, looking through the sides at their European football this past season, Basel looks like they weren't in any of it, which is surprising. This means we've got financial fair play issues already, which is worrying. So if you feel like a club has got financial fair play issues, if you go to the club, click on the history and go to landmarks, it will tell you on the landmarks if it did. And as you can see here, club fail Champions League financial fair play regulations. In that case, that must mean that Young Boys and St. Gallen qualified for the Champions League last season. So we'll start with Young Boys. They got into the group stages. Didn't look like they got through because they had a very tough group of Inter, Madrid and Manchester United. So not progressing through that, which is understandable. I assume St. Gallen would have suffered a similar fate if we look at their Champions League group with Genk, PSG and Roma. Similar fate, not getting through that at all, which is understandable. Thun, then, how did you guys get on in the Europa Conference League for some? Yeah, Europa Conference League were Thun. They got through the group stage because they got drawn in the first knockout round there against Club Brugge, but lost it. So out in the first knockout round, which is a little bit of a shame considering how good they were last season. Lausanne must have qualified as well for something. Unfortunately, they got knocked out in their first qualifying round against Anderlecht, 5-0 on aggregate, which is kind of disappointing, I've got to say. So bad season for Lausanne. And also must mean that Luzern qualified as well, because it all got shifted down one after Basel. They got into the first qualifying round for the Europa Conference League, but again, lost that one too. So quite a poor season in Europe, this one. The reputation of a league, though, is still increasing up to 10th, which is good going. If we have a quick look at the coefficient as well, Switzerland up to 8th in coefficients, which is pretty good. They are going to drop down after a poor season behind the Dutch and against Russia as well. They get slightly less preferential treatment in Champions League qualification, though they do get one straight through to the group stages still, which is good. But hopefully, to finish off today's episode in Season 6, we'll see someone go on to do some good stuff in a European competition. And for the final time in today's episode, this time Basel go on to win the title on goal difference ahead of Young Boys. That's the closest we've seen it. And Grasshoppers not too far away on 72 points, only 4 points off the top two teams, which is good stuff. So good to see Grasshoppers back in the mix. Zamax also, after being promoted at some point, have got themselves back into 4th, with St. Gallen in 5th, and Thun missing out on European football after spending a lot of money. Are they going to have a bit of a demise now? Let's find out. This time, Young Boys thought it was time to spend a lot of money. They've been splashing the cash this time on a couple of good players. Grasshoppers also spending a fair bit of money too. How much have Young Boys have spent big this season? £175 million they've spent. That's their biggest splash yet. That is a huge transfer window from Young Boys. To be fair though, Grasshoppers have spent a nice bit of money too. How much money have they spent over the past season or so? Transfer history, they spent £88 million. That's by a long shot, their biggest spend in a single summer. That's very, very big, with Bonaventura coming in from Club Brugge there for £18.5 million. And for the final time, let's see how they got on in Europe this season. So, Young Boys into the Champions League group stages against Olympiacos, Atletico Madrid and Standard Liège. That's a winnable group, that is, and looks like they only lost one game there against Atletico Madrid. So they must be through into the later stages. They did get through into the later stages, but had Barcelona in that Champions League first knockout round and lost 4-1 on aggregate. But that's the first we've seen a side get in the Champions League, which is pretty good going. So well done, Young Boys there. Basel, how did they get on? They were back in European football. They were in the Champions League group stages against Kiev, Madrid and PSG, which is a very tough group, I've got to say. By looks of things, though, they might have got through. They did. They got through. They finished third in their group, so they got through into the Europa League, so that's quite good. They beat Lille on penalties there in the end, then went and beat Tottenham very convincingly 5-1 in the second round. The quarterfinals, all right, of that Swiss Cup quarterfinal. Europa League quarterfinal, though, against Lazio, 1-0 there and a 1-1 there, so they got through 2-1 on aggregate into the semi-finals. Let's scroll down slowly. They faced Man United in the semi-finals, lost 2-1, drew 2-2, so they got knocked out in the semi-finals, but that is fantastic from Basel. They have been the best team in Europe. A final of the Conference League and a semi-final of the Europa League. Fair play, lads. Luzern, then, how did you guys get on in the Europa League? Well, not very well, because they got knocked out in that first knockout round. That's knockout round, actually. I thought qualification round. So they got through their group somehow, but then got knocked out in the knockout rounds, which is understandable. Grasshoppers then, my team, how did you guys get on in the Conference League? It looks like they did okay. They got through to the group stages against Cluj, Beitzen, is that Narva? I think you maybe pronounced that? I don't know, I've probably said it wrong completely, but they looks like they got through this group pretty comfortably because they seem to have won most of their games. Straight into the second knockout round then of the Conference League, convincing 6-1 victory over Midtjylland. Into the quarterfinals with a big win against Lech Poznan 3-1 on aggregate. Into the semi-finals where they beat Slavia Prague. Okay, are we about to see Grasshoppers win the Conference League? Let's scroll down slowly. Oh, I can't believe it. Another team losing the Europa Conference League final. This time it's to Apoel. Is that a Cypriot side? Fair play to this Cypriot side for winning that competition. That's mental. The Conference League, though, past winners of this. San Sebastian have won it twice, beating Basel once, and then, of course, Grasshoppers have lost it to Apoel. So close yet so far. That is massive from Grasshoppers, though. That is absolutely massive from them, though, so fair play. We'll quickly look over Toon, which were the final side. They got into the Conference League group stages, but by looks of things, didn't really do much in there at all, so disappointing from Toon there, but overall, a very, very good season in European football there, so I'm pleased with that. We'll just finally check on the coefficient. We are now up to 52 points, which is going to put us above Portugal and Belgium, in behind France, up to number 6 overall, and that is pretty good going. So I've got to say, I think we've had a very successful opening episode of this one. Next time, I'm going to go 10 seasons in the future, but we'll probably do things a little bit quicker. We've taken a bit longer than I would expect us to take to actually get through his first episode, so we'll do things a bit quicker next time around, but it should be pretty decent. If we have more progress like we have had today, we could literally see Switzerland become the best league in all of Europe, and that's really exciting. So, of course, thanks ever so much for watching today's episode. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have done, please do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Goodbye.